Room. After the uproar over an Islam-hating video out of California, now comes the reaction of a French satirical weekly. Staunchly anti-clerical newspaper Charlie Hebdo publishing naked cartoons of the Prophet, sparking the full spectrum of reactions. Some call it a stand for free speech, a cheap publicity stunt, say others, and for many, an incitement to hatred. Paris says it's going to be closing embassies and French schools in some 24 countries this Friday, like Tunisia, where after last week's run on the U.S. embassy, the ruling Islamists endorsed the idea of, quote, peaceful and civilized protests. Now, not so for the handful of hardline Islamists in France who last Saturday were arrested outside the U.S. embassy and who've been banned from demonstrating again this week. France, home to Europe's largest Muslim population, the overwhelming majority of which are, of course, moderate. And in a nation where the separation of religion and state's always a hot-button issue, they strongly feel that this is one controversy they could have done without. Today in the France 24 debate, free speech or fueling hatred? And with us to talk about it, Franco-Syrian photojournalist Amar Abed-Rabba. Welcome back, sir. Welcome to Fadi Fadel, Dean of the American Business School in Paris. Also joining us, Radu Stonescu of Riposte Laïque. Thank you for being with us. Riposte Laïque, an association that states that it's against political Islam. Yes. And from Doha, Tariq Ramadan, who teaches Islamic studies at Oxford and the author of Islam and the Arab Awakening, the France 24 debate, where you've been reacting on this issue on Facebook and also on Twitter, where you can always find us at François F24. And speaking of tweets, let's begin with one from Ruan McCormick, the Irish Times Paris correspondent. Here's what he tweeted earlier, that initial print run of Charlie Hebdo has sold out, making this its best-selling issue since February 2006, when it published Mohammed cartoons. Now, it published those Mohammed cartoons, and that resulted in the eventual firebombing of the newspaper. This time around, even though, like we say, the issue only came out on the newsstands this Wednesday, it's been sold like hotcakes, the paper's editor denies that it's all a publicity stunt.
If we start saying, yes, we're scared, then it's over. We'll stop publishing newspapers and launching debates. That'll be the end of freedom of the press. If France wants to make blasphemy an offence, well, then we'll shut up shop and move to another country.
Does that argument stand in your view, Amar Abed-Rabba?
I'm very embarrassed, with the Charlie Hebdo affair, because Charlie Hebdo says and shouts that it's doing this just by freedom of speech, because that is what is really sacred in France. But I have to remember that a few years ago, Charlie Hebdo fired one of the major cartoonists, Ciné, just because he mentioned that Sarkozy's son was going to marry a Jew girl. That was the only thing. And they fired him and they said that's anti-Semitic, and they lost the case. He sued them and they lost the case. So freedom of speech is not that sacred in Charlie Hebdo, and nowhere when you look at it. So,
all right, but notwithstanding the internal politics of the paper, do they have the right to publish that cartoon?
They have the right, of course, but isn't it easy also? You know exactly which button to press and which reaction you will have. It's not that complicated. They've done it before. They do it again today. I am sure there is different freedom of speech, or there's different way to say it than just hitting or beating or shouting on the Muslim community that is in a lot of parts of the world is poor, is not cultured enough, is weak politically, etc., etc. So, of course, you push that button, you'll have tomorrow maybe a lot of demonstration, a lot of burning places or whatever. It's terrible, but Charlie Hebdo knows that very well, and the result is today we are talking about Charlie Hebdo everywhere in the world. The name of Charlie Hebdo is known. If it's just for that, it's just for publicity and to have the whole newspaper sold out, I think it's a pity.
Radu Stonescu?
Well, I don't really agree with this vision of the things, because I think that, first of all, the problem is that those people are like robots. You press some buttons and they explode. And I think that's very difficult to deal with such people. But I don't think we have to accept that people act like robots. The main thing is that the main problem is that they act like robots.
But somebody who doesn't act like robots, I'll interrupt you there, is the head of the French Council of Muslims. He's expressed indignation and anger on behalf of the other Muslims in the country, but he's also put out a message of moderation.
They will not respond to provocation. They won't give in to provocation. But at the same time, we're expecting from the authorities and from the highest levels of the state strong messages like the ones that we have heard in the last few days, and again yesterday, to reassure and appease Muslims, and to remind them that they have a right to the same respect as all their fellow citizens.
It's a question where an entire community feels slighted, Tariq Ramadan?
Yes, I think that if you come to the situation, of course, the Muslims around the world have been, hurt and disappointed by the movie first, the video first, and then it's quite clear that Charlie Hebdo is trying to take advantage of the situation to show that they are ready to, what they say, that they are ready to protect and defend freedom of expression. In fact, it's not this at all. It's just an exercise of publicity for them. They did it before. They come now with the very noble principle of freedom of speech, and they use it in a very dirty way, because this has nothing to do with experiencing freedom of speech. We have seen people being killed in the Muslim majority countries, and the way some people are talking about these people who cannot just master themselves, they should still think about some of the situations within which the people are. There is no justification to violence. We cannot prevent the people from speaking their mind, but there is something which is an ethical way to deal with the legal freedom that you have. It's legal to be free, and you have to legally protect the freedom of people, but it's ethical to know how to use it in a specific situation where you have sensitive situations, as we have now in the Muslim majority countries. At the end of the day, the great majority of the Muslims are not reacting violently. The great majority of the Muslims, and especially if the West, even in France today, or in the Netherlands before, or in Denmark, or even in the States.
Tariq Ramadan, I'm going to interrupt you because the line is a bit poor. We're going to try to call you back on a different number. But what you're saying there is that most people are not reacting, and that there's the difference between what's legal and what's ethical. When you look at this, Fadi Fadel, and we can look at some of the other reactions that we've seen in France, and it's been heated reactions on both sides over this. It is such a hot-button issue.
I think that the issue is not really a juridical issue. It's such more convenience issue regarding this the Charlie Hebdo, what it had published in one hand, and in other hand, in the very tense context after the American movie, the very cheap American movie, The Innocence of Muslims. So the sensibility of the French Muslims and European Muslims is a little bit very tight, and it's, how to say, it could be a provocation for them, and it's the reality. I don't think that this issue is an incitement for religious hatred, but it could be kind of a provocation, especially for those, for example, who will react against the caricatural designs and graphics, and especially according to the Quran and the Islamic legislation, already the Prophet cannot be graphically represented. Already, if you want, for the good thing or the bad thing, the Prophet cannot be represented. So, not Charlie Hebdo is representing the Prophet, but is making kind of new caricatures, which could be interpreted and explained and spelled out as kind of offensive against the faith. But the moderate believers, they are approaching the issue not as, how to say, religious satire, but such as more provocation. And the moderate believers, they can make kind of a distance between what they are saying, and how they will react. The others who consider that they are really concerned by this caricatural design and graphics, those who are not, how to say, between brackets, moderated, or those who have another agenda, another aim to accomplish, it could be kind of a pretext, in order to make a show off regarding their plans, regarding their superficial faith, etc.
All right, and
sorry, just a second, François. We have to just say something that Charlie Hebdo says it do also this to piss off the Muslim fundamentalists or the political Islam or something like that, which is not true. I mean, these people, the Muslim fundamentalists, they love things like the video, or they love things like Charlie Hebdo because it gives them a lot of fuel, because they are saying the West is like this. Look at the West. We all know that the West is not like this. We all know that there's a lot of respect of Islam in Europe or in the US. And we all know, as you said, that the majority of Muslims do respect the law.
But the problem is
might be saddened. But
why the majority of Muslims isn't able to silence this tiny minority? Because we are told in Europe that this is a tiny minority all the time. So, I mean, there's some kind of a surprise. Why the vast majority of moderate Muslims isn't able to stop a little minority to steer this turmoil and this destruction? I don't know. I mean, it's a question. Why? Well, I mean, I think any Westerner is kind of puzzled when we are told, okay, the vast majority is moderate and peaceful and tolerant, and how can be a vast majority, ruled by a tiny minority of violent, intolerant people like the Salafists? So I think this is the first question. And the second one is, I think that this is an occasion for the Muslims to show their tolerance, because being tolerant is actually bearing that somebody thinks or does things that you don't like. I mean, this is what being tolerant means. I mean, tolerating something is basically not taking action at something which is kind of offensive. But it's not offensive to the Muslims, it's offensive to Muhammad. So the Muslims are not Muhammad. Some Muslims think they want to be Muhammad, but those are the Salafists. Wow. But this is the problem. And
all right, let's put the question to Tariq Ramadan. Why is it that a very vocal minority is getting so much attention?
Look, it's always the same. I think that if you look at the situation, you have people who are a tiny minority, but they provoke violence and they take to the street and they are vocal, and the media coverage is just bringing something which is a vicious circle, because the journalists are covering this and then they go...
Well, there was a U.S. ambassador killed and there were 4 killed in Tunis. I mean, there's a reason why there's been media coverage.
But of course, I'm not blaming the media. I'm saying it's a vicious circle where the great majority of the Muslims cannot be. You know, when you are constructing a society, when you come with a vision of the society, you don't make the headlines. So you will just focus on the people who are destroying, because this is news. Destroying is news. Demonstrating is news. Building and being silent is not news. The great majority, once again, look at what is happening in France or in the Netherlands, in other countries.
Being silent is not taking action. If you are silent, you are not speaking against the people who are vocal.
Of course, the problem, you know, I just launched a call to the contemporary Muslim conscience, asking the leaders and the Muslim scholars to speak out and to ask the Muslims to calm down. The situation is very complex. Why? Because all these demonstrations are mainly coming from, and violent demonstrations are coming from southern societies where there is a great deal of frustrations, and they have nothing to do with religion. It's unemployment, it's corruption, and it's a transitory period. The people were thinking and hoping that changes will come faster. And here we have a group of people coming to direct all these frustrations towards the West and the United States of America. And of course, this is religious populism. And we have this religious populism in many Muslim majority countries and pushing the people towards violence. And we have exactly the same in the West. Today we have populists who are now saying that the Muslims are the enemy, the Muslims, Islam is cancer. So we have two populism being objective allies in the whole business, and we are caught in between. And what I would say here, once again, let it be clear, what Charlie Hebdo is doing now is to use a noble value of freedom of speech to make something which is only to get the media attention. And this is not noble, and this is not freedom of speech.
All right,
this is pure provocation.
Let's hear the reaction of the French Prime Minister, who spoke a short while ago. He warned all sides against acts of hatred and violence.
I have reminded everybody of the government's firmness. We are living in a state of law where there is freedom of expression and of the press, which also covers cartoons, but at the same time, the notion of responsibility exists. As far as public order is concerned, all precautions have been taken in association with the Interior Minister to completely ensure public order.
And we'll talk about it a bit more in part two, but the fact is that in France there is no law against blasphemy. We'll talk a little bit more in detail about that. But Amr Abed Rabo, I just want to show you here. There was a tweet out of Cairo from a BBC journalist there, Shaima Khalil, who quotes Essam Erim of the Muslim Brotherhood, so Freedom and Justice Party, is saying France's judiciary should deal with the cartoons as firmly as it has handled the case of Kate Middleton. Those photos, that have been banned.
It's very different cases, of course. But regarding the justice, I mean, in the affair of the Charlie Hebdo, was it 2006? The
first one, yeah.
The Muslim institutions of France, was it the Mosque of Paris or the CFCM, reacted in suing the publication, and they lost the case. And it seems to me, I'm not sure 100%, but it seems to me...
They say they're probably not going to sue this time.
Yeah, probably they're not going to sue this time. So it's... I mean, we also have to deal... I mean, a majority of Muslim people and also their representatives come from countries where this tradition, let's say, of blasphemy or of cartoons, does not exist. So
they have to learn.
Yeah, well, they are learning. I mean, if you don't see that, you don't. It's being blind, They're learning, and it's very interesting for me to see that in 2006 they did sue, and nowadays probably they will not. I mean, we're not 100% sure of that, but they probably will not sue. So they're learning. Let's give them time.
The years. That's something we'll see when we get back. The years pass, but in France, the relationship with religion as a whole remains uneasy. Stay with us. It's the France 24 debate.